uncertainty about macro policies. So we've been talking about uncertainty about macroeconomic policies since the last one or two recordings. And we said this, that because the macroeconomic models, they're based on different assumptions. So if you tweak some of these assumptions, it is going to result in very different outcomes. So whatever macroeconomic models are going to say, do little less than that. That's a prudent way of going about the policy. Then Blanchard takes the discussion further and he talks about that there is an uncertainty about macroeconomic policy, and that uncertainty is coming also because of the expectations of consumers and firms, that how the policy is going to work, right? So people and firms, they are not only going to react to the current policy, but also about their expectations of the policy, right? So that is there. So there is an uncertainty about the macro policies, and that is related to the expectations about how policy might work, right? So people and firms, they're not only reacting to the current policy, but they're also reacting to the expectations of the policy. That is the thing. So people and firm react not only to the current policy, but also to the expectations of future policy, what they expect policy to be in the future. Expectations. About the future policy, right? So Blanchard says this, that with this logic, you can actually think of the macroeconomic policies as a game, right? So there are people and firms on the one side, and there are policymakers on the other side, right? So what people and firms do, whatever consumers and firms they are doing, that is going to be dependent upon what they expect policymakers to do, right? So in case if the policymakers are going to announce the policy that there is going to be the zero inflation rate, then the consumers and the firms will be reacting to that policy, and their actions will be based upon the announcement of such the policy by the policymakers, right? And at the same time, what policymakers do is dependent upon what is happening in the economy. So in case if the demand is more in the economy, then the prices are rising, then policymakers are expected to do something to reduce the inflation. So policymakers are doing depending on what consumers and firms are doing. And what consumers and firms are doing is based upon the expectation what policymakers are doing. So don't you think it's like a game which is going on, right? So the thing is that these macro policies can be thought of as a game between these policymakers and consumers and firms. People and firms. So people and firms that take decisions, their economic decisions based on what they expect policy to be. So, and policymakers are taking decisions depending on what's going on in the economy. So what is going on in the economy means what are the decisions which people and firms are taking. And people and firms are taking the decision depending on what policymakers are going to do. So we'll take up two cases. In one of the case, policymakers will do exactly what they have announced. While in the another case, policymakers will deviate from what they have announced. And we will see how this is going to work. Right. So case one. Central bank follows its announced policy. Central bank follows its announced policy. It's announced policy, whatever they have announced, it's announced policy. So let us say that there's nothing to say about it. This is the case. We have not we in this series, but this is, if you read Blanchard, in one of the chapter, he has derived the Phillips curve equation. And we get this expression out here. So this is what it is. Okay, let me take a little digression so that I can tell you something about it, and then I'll come back to this point. So suppose, you may not want to write this if you don't want. Suppose if pi et is equal to pi t minus 1, last year's inflation. So I can write this expression as pi t minus 1 is equal to minus alpha ut minus un. So it means what? If ut is going to be greater than un, so this expression is going to be positive, then pi t is going to be less than pi t minus 1. So what do you mean by this? But if ut is greater than un, ut greater than un means unemployment is more with respect to what? With respect to the natural level of unemployment. So if unemployment is more than the natural level of unemployment, that means people are not employed. When people are not employed, their incomes are going to fall. When their incomes are going to fall, their demand is going to fall. When demand is going to fall, prices are going to fall. Relative to what? Last year prices. So the inflation this year is less than inflation last year. So that is the point which I want to say. So this is just a recap of what you have done. So you may not want to write this. I'm just rubbing it off. Just explaining this. Okay, so central bank follows its announced policy. And let's say central bank announces. Suppose central bank announces that it will follow the policy that, sorry, your pi t is going to be equal to 0. Sorry, pi t will be 0. Zero inflation. So central bank announces that it is going to have the policy where there will be zero inflation in the country, right? And also suppose that people believe, suppose people believe the announcement. So in that case, they will be expecting inflation to be 0 because they have believed. what central bank is trying to say. So the relation which the central bank is going to face is this. Abhi, just wait, right? Just wait. I've not put this thing equal to 0. I've just put pi t equals to 0, right? I'm going to further suppose things. Suppose it d if alpha is equal to 1. This is just a constant, right? That is a response of the change in the unemployment rate on the change in the inflation rate. So if alpha is equal to 1 beta, so the relation which I have is pi equals to now just ut minus un, right? So if central bank is going to follow its announced policy, so what is the policy of the central bank? That is going to say that fine, we will have the inflation equal to 0, right? So if central bank follows its announced policy, and pi t is 0, and ut is equal to u, right? So if central bank is going to follow its announced policy, central bank will choose the unemployment rate equal to the natural rate of unemployment. And in this case, inflation is going to be equal to 0, right? So the outcome is inflation equal to 0. So central bank wants to achieve inflation equal to 0. So central bank starts with this expression. Let's say your alpha is equal to 1 and central bank wants to achieve pi t equals to 0. So the way it will be able to achieve this, if it is going to put ut equals to un, and the moment it does that, your pi t comes out to be equal to 0. So central bank is able to achieve what central bank has said. Okay, now we'll take up the interesting case. That is, if central bank is not going to follow its announced policy, right? So please write this. Case 2, if central bank does not follow its announced policy. If central bank does not follow its announced policy, right? So what is it that central bank has announced? Initially, central bank has announced pi e equals to 0. This is what central bank has announced, right? So, and not pi e equals to 0, pi equals to 0. I'm so sorry. Pi equals to 0. And people, because they are believing that what central bank is going to do, they are going to expect pi equals to 0. This is what an initial thing is. But this is there. It's going to be this, right? If central bank now thinks that it is going to deviate from what it has announced. So central bank says that, okay, fine. Instead of 0% inflation, let me accept 1% inflation. Then what unemployment rate it has to target? That's the point. If central bank can accept 1% inflation. So when you say it is accepting 1% inflation, it is not what it has announced. This is not what it has announced. It is different from what it has announced. It has announced 0% inflation. But if central bank can accept 1% inflation, then this expression becomes what? 1 equals to minus UT minus UM. Right? So UT would be equal to 1 plus UM. UT is going to be equal to 1 plus UM. So the point is that minus 1, I'm so sorry, minus 1. Yeah, minus 1. So if central bank can accept the 1% inflation, then this is going to be 1 equals to minus U plus UM, like this. So this is going to be this thing. So it means that the unemployment rate can be 1% below unemployment rate can be 1% below. So just think it from the point of view of the central bank. Central bank is having even lesser unemployment than the natural level of unemployment. So don't you think from central bank's perspective, it is doing better? Because it is even trying to reduce the unemployment lesser. So central bank might think that by accepting some inflation, I'm trying to do better, right? So what is going to happen? So if you look at central bank's perspective, from central bank's perspective, it is doing better than what has been announced, right? So central bank is thinking that, okay, fine, if I'm accepting 1% inflation, I'm able to reduce unemployment even further, right? But this is called the inconsistency or time inconsistency of the optimal policy. This deviation, that you are deviating from what you have announced, but you are deviating after other player has made his choice. So who are the other players? Wage setters, employees. They have set their wages. They've set their wages. So the moment they set their wages, prices have been set. So one party has already made that choice. Now you are deviating. So this is what the time inconsistency of the optimal policy. So this incentive to deviate from the announced policy, this is not over. I'll come back to this. This incentive to deviate from the announced policy once the other player as majors move, this is called time inconsistency of optimal policy. Right. But do you think that the wage setters are going to do the same mistake every time? So they have set their wages expecting that the central bank is going to follow its policy. What was central bank's policy in the first place? To have inflation zero. But what has central bank actually done? It has accepted 1% inflation. So don't you think the wage setters are also going to become intelligent over time? They will understand that central bank will be deviating from what it is trying to say. So central bank may not necessarily do what it has announced. So when these guys, wage setters, they are also going to wise up, right? So wage setters but wage setters are likely to wise up, right? Because they will also understand that although central bank has announced that it will accept 0% inflation, it is not going to have 0% inflation. It is accepting 1% inflation, right? So they also understand this, that this was the condition now. Ut is equal to 1 minus un. This was the condition. Okay. So this is when the central bank wants to achieve 1% below un. This is that case, na? This is this case. If central bank wants to achieve 1%, wants to achieve unemployment 1% below UN, right? Below UN. Achha, they also understand this. What's also understand this. So from this expression, if you want to reach till this ut equals to 1 minus un, and people will also start expecting that it is not going to be 0, it is going to be 1% inflation. No, it is not going to be 0 inflation, it is going to be 1% inflation. No? And if I want to reach till this thing, I need to have pi t equals to 2. So now if you just change it, this will come out to be what? 1 equals to minus ut minus un. Like this. 1 equals to minus ut minus un. So it is minus ut plus un, right? Minus ut plus un. So you have what? Ut equals to minus 1 plus un. Ut equals to what? Minus 1 plus un. So it is minus 1 plus un. I'm so sorry. It should be minus 1 plus un. So sorry. It should be minus 1 plus un. So you're getting what I'm trying to do. Now people would know that no, central bank will not have 0 inflation. So they will start expecting 1% inflation, because ultimately central bank has done 1% inflation, has accepted 1% inflation. Now if central bank wants to achieve unemployment rate below the natural level of unemployment, that is 1% below the natural level of unemployment, then central bank can't do with just 1% inflation. Central bank will have to go out with 2% inflation. Are you with me? Because when central bank has deviated from what it has announced, central bank said it will have 0% inflation, but it has accepted 1% inflation. But now for 1% inflation, people also understand that it has announced 0% inflation, it is accepting 1% inflation. So people also say, we will start expecting 1% inflation. So this pi, which was 0 earlier, it is now 1. Now, in order to achieve the same result, you will have to have 2% inflation now. So the point which I want to make is that the eventual outcome is likely to be high inflation. So the eventual outcome is likely to be high inflation. Because wage setters, they will also understand the motives of the central bank. So they will say that no. 0% inflation central bank is not going to have. It will announce 0, but ultimately inflation is going to be 1%. So why should we also expect 0% inflation? We will also expect 1% inflation. So the actual inflation, expected inflation will catch up with the actual inflation. And ultimately, central bank will be unsuccessful in its attempt to achieve the unemployment rate below the natural level of unemployment. Below the natural level of unemployment. Because if people start believing that the inflation is going to be 1% instead of 0%, and central bank targets only 1% of inflation, you will have UT equals to UN. You will not have UT less than UN. बेटा बात आई समझ में? कहने का मतलब ये है कि अगर सेंट्रल बैंक ने पहले कहा था 0% इन्फ्लेशन टारगेट होगा, लेकिन उसने 1% कर लिया, तो लोगों ने पहले तो विश्वास करा कि ठीक है, इन्होंने 0% कहा है, हम 0% ही रखें, ठीक है, अपनी इन्फ्लेशन, अपनी एक्सपेक्टेशन को. बट फिर लोगों को समझ में आ जाता है कि नहीं, अब सेंट्रल बैंक ने क्योंकि 0% कहा था, करा 1%, सो हम 1% पे. Expected inflation starts catching up with the actual inflation. तो अगर अब सेंट्रल बैंक यहाँ पे 1% इन्फ्लेशन रखना चाहे तो वो यूटी इक्वल्स टू यूएन आ जाएगा. यूटी यूएन से कम नहीं होगा. जो सेंट्रल बैंक चाह रहा था करना वो नहीं हो पाएगा. सेंट्रल बैंक वांटेड टू अचीव द अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट रेट व्हिच वाज लेसर देन द नेचुरल लेवल ऑफ अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट, बट सेंट्रल बैंक वोंट बी एबल टू अचीव दैट. Central bank won't be able to achieve that in this particular case, right? So the idea is that in an attempt that central bank wants to do little better than what it has planned to do, it is unsuccessful. It actually start making things worse. Inflation और ज्यादा ही हो जाता है. तुमने 1% एक्सेप्ट करना स्टार्ट कर दिया, तुम्हारे को 2% चाहिए in order to have the same result, right? So in short, attempts by the central bank to make things better lead in the end to the things being worse. In short, attempts by the central bank to make things better lead in the end things being worse, right? Okay, I'll take the discussion further in the next class. Thank you, Beta.